Welcome everybody to AFSO21 Radio. You're listening to the Weekend Wrap-Up.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Weekend Wrap-Up here on AFSO21 Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Ferrara, and folks, before we get started, I just want to apologize. We're sort of pushed back about a week. We had some things going on. We had to push our podcast. Typically, we try to post them every 2 weeks. We had some, like I said, we had some things that went on. We had to push it back. We're going to try to get back on schedule here as quickly as we can, but we want to thank all of our listeners for sticking with us, listeners, viewers. So, you know, this episode, it's going to be, as with all episodes, really, it's jam-packed full of, you know, a lot of great information for firefighters, emergency responders out there. This one, we're going to touch on a lot of things. So before we get started, let's, as always, hear from our sponsor, Fire Department Coffee.
One of the first things people ask me when they meet me is
Fire Department Coffee a real company?
Yes, we're real. Like, really real.
No, we're not roasting your tasty beans here at the fire station. That's called water hammer. But we are roasting those wonderful beans of sanity to the perfect temperature here at our roasting facility.
And then shipping them to you from our brand spanking new fulfillment center. But don't take my word for it. Hear from some of the amazing people that have had our coffee.
Yeah, Fire Department coffee's real. Real as this guy's face.
Yeah, Fire Department coffee's real. As real as my urge to never wear a shirt. God dang it!
So if incredible tasting coffee is your thing, head on over to firedepartmentcoffee.com. But only if you like real great tasting coffee, real authentic gear, and real attractive firefighters. Really good coffee.
All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of AFSO21 Radio, the Weekend Wrap-Up. Again, I'm your host, Kevin Ferrara. And folks, before we get started, I want to pay tribute to someone that recently passed away, firefighter, deputy fire chief here in central Pennsylvania. And I'm talking about my cousin, Stevie Ferrara. He was battling some illness for quite a long time. Recently, his health declined, and unfortunately, we lost him. Stevie was only 56, young at heart, young individual. You know, as they said, you know, at his service yesterday, you know, Stevie was a fireman's fireman. You know, he grew up, you know, surrounded by those in the fire service. You know, the fire service here in central PA, particularly the Lock Haven Fire Department. You know, they welcomed him with open arms. You know, his dad was a firefighter. His relatives were a firefighter. I was a firefighter there at Lock Haven for a small bit. And, you know, he sort of transitioned from being, you know, a firefighter to a 911 dispatcher. You know, overall, Stevie loved helping individuals, no matter where they were. In fact, you know, he was given an accommodation for saving some lives. You know, he was on his way to work one day. Tones dropped for a structure fire with entrapment, and it turns out he was in the right place at the right time. He stopped, entered the building, started doing a search, located the victims, got them out to safety, and you know, everybody at the end of the day went home. But that was Stevie. You know, he had a great turnout at his memorial, at his service. You know, he's definitely going to be missed. You know, his family right now is, you know, as with any, you know, loss, you know, and, you know, by family members, you know, it's a little bit of a struggle for them. But as I've always said, the fire service, that's an even bigger family. They have, you know, my support. firefighters from here in Pennsylvania, and hopefully firefighters, emergency responders that are viewing and listening to this, you know, you reach out in some fashion. You know, they are, instead of, you know, at the service, instead of flowers and everything like that, they wanted contributions made to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And I'm going to post links up here as well, you know, on how to do that. So, you know, if you care to share, you know, and honor Stevie, we'll have links up there. You can post comments on social media, on, you know, this YouTube channel, for this episode. And of course, if you want to make a donation to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, you're more than happy to do that as well. So, but yeah, I just wanted to start out this episode remembering my cuz. We actually worked together a few times. I was a dispatcher for a short period. We caught a few fires together, and that was Stevie's thing. You know, every time he saw me, he was like, "Hey, what's up, cuz?" You know, so it's, you know, he's, like I said, he's going to be missed. Gone too soon. So we honor you. We love you, Stevie. Hopefully you're looking down on us and protect all of us. So, okay, folks, moving on to the topics at hand in the fire service. As always, you'll see me bouncing around here, different screens. I got some notes with me today, put some stuff together. One thing that I recently got via email, and some firefighters out there, military veterans, you're probably going to see this email as well if you signed up for, remember that burn pit registry we signed up for years ago, and we really haven't heard anything about it lately. Well, that was up until the other day. I get an email, and of course it says do not reply, but it's titled Presumption Based on Particulate Matter. And I'll be honest, you know, I almost deleted the thing, you know, because I see these, you know, it says do not reply, and I'm like, okay, you know, whatever these are, spam email. I thought, you know, that's what I thought it was. So I'm reading through it. Let me actually bring it over to this screen so I'm not giving you a side view of me. It says, "Greetings, Airborne Hazards Open Burn Pit Registry participant." Ooh, you know, official. So it says, you know, "We would like you to know that the Department of Veterans Affairs, VA, started processing disability claims on August 2nd, 2021 for asthma, rhinitis, and sinusitis on a presumptive basis based on particulate matter exposure during military service in Southwest Asia and other certain areas. If these conditions manifested within 10 years of a qualifying period of military service." And see, folks, that's where that, I hate it when the VA and legislators put timeframes in there. You know, they're saying, oh, it's got to manifest within this 10 years. Well, folks, we're human. Our bodies don't react the same. And I'm going to talk about that here in a bit with some other pieces of legislation that I'm working on and trying to get revised because of these timelines. So the email goes on and says, you know, "You assisted this process by joining the Airborne Hazards and Open Burn Pit Registry. The information that you provided was included in the decision making for these three conditions." And it goes on and it's saying, "It's important to note that the presumption is based on particulate matter exposure, which can be caused by a variety of sources to include sand or dust, exhaust from diesel fuel and other engines, air pollution, and burn pits." And it says, "We encourage you, if you have symptoms suggested of the three conditions, such as a chronic cough or ongoing runny nose or sinus congestion, to get evaluated by a healthcare professional, to make a diagnosis, and to file a claim if your condition fits with the presumptive conditions." I can tell you, mine does. There for a while, I had a chronic cough, constant runny nose, and you know, I thought it was because when I first got out of the military, I came back here to Central Pennsylvania. I was a deputy sheriff, and they plastered me with pepper spray. Those in law enforcement, you know, you got to go through the was it oleoresin capsicum, aka pepper spray. So you got to get sprayed with it so you know the effects of it, and be able to, try to overcome those if you have to, capture somebody or whatever. Well, me being the big guy, they decided to empty damn near the whole can on me. I looked like a carrot. My face was orange. I had a white shirt on. I was orange. And I thought, because of that, it obviously contributed to it. My sinuses were screwed up because I would always have a runny nose. After that, to this day, I can't really eat a lot of spicy foods because I start getting a runny nose. Well, here it turns out, the first time I was in, we went to Saudi Arabia. They had burn pits down in Saudi during the Gulf War. That contributed. And then I went back in the military, ended up going to Uzbekistan. And that's, when they talk about Southwest Asia, that is one of the areas that they talk about. So, in this airborne and burn pit exposures, you go onto the VA's website and they talk about on the VA's site, public health, it says airborne hazards and burn pit exposures. And it says this will expand benefits for veterans who served in Afghanistan, Djibouti, Syria, and Uzbekistan during the Persian Gulf War from September 19th, 2001 to the present, or the Southwest Asia the Southwest Asia Theater of Operations from August 2nd, 1990 to the present. So we know Southwest Asia, Gulf War, 1990, on up to the present. Afghanistan, Djibouti, Syria, Uzbekistan during the Gulf War. During the Persian Gulf War from September 19, 2001 to the present. Saudi Arabia, Southwest Asia, I was there. Uzbekistan, I was there. But then I was like, okay, how is the VA defining the Southwest Asia Theater of Operations? So I go to another VA page. And this is, folks, this is what I'm talking about. We should not have to research where they're talking about. They should just cut and dry, put the information out there in one page and say, okay, here's what the affected areas are. If you served in this area, then you're eligible. But the government, the VA, does not do that. So, excuse me. No, that's not the chronic cough. So in here it says, and this is actually talking about a different, they're talking about Gulf War illness linked to Southwest Asia service. That's what this page was, where I had to find out what they're talking about this theater of operations. So the very last question, it says, what's included in the Southwest Asia Theater of Military Operations? And again, this is, you got to do your homework. You got to research back and forth. But fortunately, I've done that for a lot of folks. I'm going to put the links up here. You'll be able to see this. So they consider the Theater of Military Operations as Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the neutral zone between Iraq and Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates or the UAE, Oman, the Gulf of Aden and the Gulf of Oman, the waters of the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Sea and the Red Sea, and the airspace above these locations. So if you found yourself within that theater of operation for a day, for 365 days, whatever it is, if you serve there, then according to the VA, on this airborne hazards and burn pit exposure, you are eligible to file a claim. So I encourage you, hopefully you got a set of orders that's going to make life a lot easier. It's going to probably save some time because the VA is going to want proof that you served in this area. They want proof of everything. Those that are military, you know how this works. You got to prove that it's a service-connected disability. Well, you're going to need a copy of orders most likely. If you don't have those, hopefully you can track them down. Ask a buddy. Hopefully your name's on there. Sometimes if you go as a team, they'll list the team on the back side of these orders. But at the end of the day, find a set of orders, find some proof that you were there. Just somebody vouching for you really isn't going to cut it. And then go see the VA or go see a veteran service officer and say, I need to file a claim based on this registry. And that's assuming you have those three conditions. Again, they're talking about asthma, rhinitis, and sinusitis. So that's I guess putting the cart before the horse. You sort of have to be diagnosed with one of those three from either a civilian healthcare physician, a VA doctor, military doctor, and then once you get that diagnosis, then you file a claim. And that's the big thing. Especially when I did my VA claims before I retired, went to the veteran service officer on base at Langley. I was there. She went through my records with a fine-tooth comb and found some things that it was there, but it didn't specifically say I was diagnosed with these conditions. And she's like, if it does not say diagnosed, the VA is going to kick it back. So I went back to my doc. Actually had my records updated to say, hey, I was diagnosed with these things. And then I submitted my claims. A few weeks later, believe it or not, I get a letter in the mail that says, hey, you're now 100% permanent and totally disabled by the VA. Here's your claim award. So it's a little rare that you get it that quick. But I had a fantastic VSO at Langley Air Force Base. Those that are stationed there, assigned there, you know who I'm talking about. This individual, she's been doing it for many, many, many years. And everybody that goes to see her, from what I've heard, their claims are awarded, finalized within a very short amount of time compared to other places. I've talked to folks, their claims are ongoing. They've had a year or so out. But when they finally do get approved, you get all that back pay. It's retroactive, so it's just it's a pain in the butt because you're sort of hoping to get that money, that whole transition to live off of, if you retire, depending on what your retirement amount is, it's a little bit of a struggle. So that's, I just wanted to start with that topic, burn pit registry. Like I said, I'm going to have the links to this. I encourage veterans out there. If you find yourself eligible, don't hesitate. Put in for this claim. Since me being 100% rated by the VA, I could put in for this. I'm not going to get any other compensation. I would get medical care, but my condition right now with this, I don't have asthma, I don't have all this other stuff. I occasionally have a runny nose, but it's not to the point where I need to go see a doctor all the time. So, all right, folks, getting into topic number 2. It's coming. Every episode we talk about PFAS. I had the honor of being interviewed by New Mexico PBS. Fantastic reporter. We talked about PFAS exposure that's affecting the state of New Mexico, and how I came with this was there was a story that was out there talking about the local dairy farmer. You've heard me talk about this individual over and over and over. Local dairy farmer contaminated with PFAS, his cows, his milk. He can't sell it. The Air Force come in, provide a bottle of water, but they have since shut off that nicety, that kind gesture, despite the fact that there's contamination that still exists down there. So they said, well, your water's contaminated. We're gonna give you bottled water. 6 months later, that shut off. And now he's back to drinking contaminated water again. I think he has. He probably goes out and buys bottled water himself, but he's going to be reaching out to me here in the next probably couple weeks. We're going to have a talk, and I reached out to this reporter because they said, they've reached out to Cannon Air Force Base, they reached out to the Air Force, they reached out to the DoD. Nobody will talk to these folks, and I'm hearing this a lot throughout the country. Communities are trying to reach out to the federal government, the DoD, the military. They're getting crickets, no response back. And it's understandable because there's a lot of things that are going on. From my understanding, there's some litigation that's ongoing or potentially going to happen. So this would, any court case or any legal proceedings, you really don't want to, show your hand, play your cards. It's usually no comment. And it's frustrating because, all the contamination and stuff that's going on. People are like, hey, these organizations, the DoD, the different branches of military, they're taxpayer funded. We have a right to know. And you're absolutely correct. We do have a right to know. We fund these. We fund the DoD through taxes. They are the largest recipient of government funds out there. So we expect a good return of investment for our money. So especially when it comes to PFAS. So we did the interview. We talked probably for about an hour. As with any interview, they shorten it down. They create some good snippets. I'm going to have that link on this podcast as well. And they did an interview. They did a write up. I think it was the Santa Fe Journal. They got wind of this. They put it out there. And how I come into it was, like I said before, this reporter, the farmer, they've been struggling to try to get somebody to talk. And I'm like, well, hey, wait a second. I just happened to be stationed at Cannon Air Force Base for 4 years, from 91 to 95. And as I tell everybody, I'm more than happy to share my story. And again, folks, my end game is not to throw the DoD or the Air Force or the military branches under the bus. That is not my end game. However, I will throw them under the bus when they refuse to acknowledge, and they've continued to refuse to acknowledge, the fact that they knew AFFF was toxic and hazardous. It killed fish. It caused tumors in lab mice and other animals. They knew it was harmful to humans, but they said nothing. And this dates back to the 70s and 80s. It's unfathomable to know that while we were using these products that were designed to protect us and others, the federal government, the DoD specifically, knew just the opposite. This stuff was harmful. So they sat back and they watched, they allowed it. They ordered it to be discharged into the environment, where, heard me talk about this before, and I'm probably beating a dead horse, but for the new listeners out there and viewers, this stuff seeped into the ground. You look at Cannon Air Force Base. 4 years I was there. We discharged it every day. It seeped into the ground, got into the aquifer, contaminated this farmer and his cows. And he bought the farm not too long. It was either before or after I got to Cannon Air Force Base. So, and here we are. The 4 years I was there, I was polluting his farm and at the same time drinking polluted water. Nobody told us. It's that research, that independent homework, that research that we had to dig for, and public peer pressure. I say to this day, I've told the reporter, I said, had it not been for somebody releasing this information, getting it out there, and it picked up some traction, and thank God it did, we'd probably still never know that PFAS contamination existed, or that PFAS was in foam, or that it was in our turnout gear. Diane Cotter, you've heard me talk about her a lot. She is as a lot of the folks in the industry called her the crazy lady, because she kept pressuring these industries to test their equipment, test turnout gear. And when they wouldn't do it, he reached out to independent researchers who eventually caved in, said, hey, maybe, she's got something here. They tested, Dr. Graham Peasley tested turnout gear, immediately found high levels of PFAS in turnout gear, firefighter turnout gear. So much that he ordered his staff in the laboratory to wear surgical gloves. Do not touch turnout gear with your bare hands or bare skin. That's how concerned he was. And he's, since then he's done another research on PFAS dust. We found that in, throughout firehouses, within, the apparatus within personal vehicles. We know a lot of volunteer firefighters, they take their turnout gear home, all that dust, on top of all the other carcinogens that are in the turnout gear. That's why, we keep talking about clean turnout gear. Chief Billy Goldfeder just talked about clean turnout gear. If you can't wash it in-house, there's independent agencies out there that will do it. Matter of fact, I'm in talks right now with one. They're going to be a future guest here in the podcast. We're going to talk about the importance of clean turnout gear and how these alternatives are out there. So the equipment's expensive. We know it. Despite there being grant money out there and funds to acquire this stuff, if you simply can't get the grants or you don't have the floor space to put this equipment in, there's companies out there like the one I'm going to have here in the podcast here in the future. They'll come. They'll either come to your location or you send it off. There's ways to get out there. So don't give me that excuse. Oh, we don't have the means to have clean turnout gear. It's out there. You have to take the initiative, folks. So one of the things with PFAS that we talked about in this interview was PFAS blood testing. We know the DoD, you've heard me talk about this before, my last episode, the explosive DoD IG report. One thing in there was about PFAS blood testing and how, despite the DoD is doing it right now, and the blood test itself is not mandatory. That's what a lot of folks are confused with that. Excuse me. The blood test itself is not mandatory. The only thing that was mandated in the 2020 NDAA was that the Secretary of Defense, Department of Defense, offers PFAS blood testing to firefighters. Okay? And that's military and DoD civilian personnel. Active duty. All they have to do is offer it. And that's what the DoD IG found, is that, yep, they offered it, check the box, boom, okay, they're done. Well, there's way more than that. And in this report, in the DoD IG report, they talk about how they specifically state the DoD has no intentions to track, trend, and analyze these PFAS blood test results. And I find it ironic that before this report came out, right, and I just had a feeling, folks, that the DoD was going to do this. It's great they establish a baseline. You have to start somewhere. Firefighters out there, military firefighters, DoD civilians, if you're listening, please go get the damn blood test. Don't refuse it. Don't sign that stupid little waiver that says, no, I don't want to get it. Because once you sign that waiver, you have to wait a year to if you change your mind 3 days later, guess what? You're screwed. You got to wait until your next occupational health exam. If you're not getting offered this blood test, folks, I've had some departments reach out to me. They're like, we didn't even know anything about this. We're not being offered this test. Okay? Reach out to me. I will track it down. I will get you in contact with the right folks. At the end of the day, for like the Air Force, it's the SG, it's the Med Group. They should be reaching out to active duty, Guard Reserve installations. It's for veterans, retirees like myself, we're screwed. They didn't put a provision in there. I'm trying to get that provision put in for the 2022 NDAA. But at the end of the day, it comes down to cost. The military is going to push back and say, if we have to test all these retirees and veterans, that's going to be a lot of money. Well, okay, at what point do you put a price tag on an individual's health. And really, that's what they're doing behind the scenes, folks. By not putting the provision in there for veterans, retirees, former firefighters, military firefighters, in essence, they've put a price tag on there. Just because we retired, just because those that got out early, once you walk out the gate, there's no magic window, there's no magic barrier that poof, all of our illnesses disappear. We carry those with us for the rest of our lives. We know PFAS, it stays in our body anywhere between 2 and 32 years, depending on the amount of exposure. Obviously, the more exposure you have, the more it's in there, the longer it takes. We could get into half-lives. We've talked about that before. That's why it takes so long. PFAS takes forever. That's why it's a forever chemical to break down just in half. So it's that's a whole nother topic. We've talked about that before. I don't want to beat that down. But getting into the PFAS blood test, I had some folks. I'm just going to mention their name. Eurofins. They reached out to me. I'm going to have them on the podcast here shortly. And so you'll hear more about Eurofins and what they do, but I just want to give you a real quick summary. They offer a PFAS blood test. It's different than what the DoD is doing right now. This test kit is, I just finished it up. I should have recorded it. I didn't. I was simply so excited to get it done and get it back. Comes in a little tiny box. You open it up. It's got your lancets in there, automatic lancets. You just push it on your finger, boom, pricks your finger, squeeze out the blood. It's got 4, looks like little Q-tips in it. You just dab the blood onto there, close the clamshell back up, make sure the little card in there, there's a card to keep the moisture out, or it collects the moisture. Put that all in the package. They got a return envelope. You send it back. They're stating within 5 days of receiving it, you'll get your results. We know the guys active duty, it's taking them longer to do the blood vials. That's the difference. You can do this test at home. You don't have to go into a clinic. You don't have to go into the hospital. You don't have to have some brand new intern fishing around your vein trying to get blood, giving you a black and blue. Literally, folks, it took me less than 3 minutes to do this blood test and send it off. It's got a tracking number. You can track. It's already set in California. So I fully anticipate by the end of the week coming up here, I'll have my blood test results. You will hear what these results are going to be on the next podcast. So like I said, I'm going to have these folks on the podcast here very soon. They are excited to talk about what their facility is capable of doing, and they can actually test more than the PFAS 6. That's what's awesome, is that there's more than 6 PFAS chemicals, folks. There's upwards of almost 10,000. This company, for those that are affecting firefighters that are what they consider highly dangerous, if you will. I think I consider them highly dangerous. They're able to test beyond the 6, so you get a little bit more knowledge of what's really floating around in your bloodstream. So very excited to talk about these folks, very excited to do the blood test, very excited to have them on the podcast here shortly. So more to follow on that. So folks, those that have reached out, they posted on social media, they're like, what other alternatives are there to doing a blood test? Is there anybody else out there? Yes, absolutely. Eurofins, sort of a company flying under the radar right now. But I got to give a shout out to them. I hope they're not mad at me. Got to give a shout out to them, because this test kit is so damn simple and quick. And it's easy. Like I said, I mean, folks, I just simply can't believe it. You get the box, you open it up, you read the directions, boom, 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 bada bing, bada boom. You send it back and you're done. I mean, you can't get any simpler than what they've developed. And hats off to this company. I mean, it's just user friendly alone is a reason to check them out. You don't have to piss with, making an appointment, going in, getting a blood test, or, or going to the VA and getting turned around. Because, again, cost, folks. The VA, the military, they're putting a price tag on firefighter veterans, human life in general. They're putting a price tag on it. They're like, nope, we just simply can't afford to test your blood and see if you're a high risk of developing a medical illness or cancer due to PFAS. What the hell are we doing, folks? We're dropping trillions of taxpayer dollars into these organizations, and they have the audacity to look at veterans in the eye when they go in and they're seeking help. These veterans are seeking help, and the doctors are like, nope, we don't do it. Nope, not going to do it. Not going to do it. My civilian doctor, I went to him years ago. I told you about the, previous podcast, I talked about the PFOA test, that it literally took me a year to figure out that TRICARE offers it. And it came back non-detectable. I knew it because, the lab, they're not testing as in-depth as what Eurofins claims they do. And we'll find out. It's having to do that. But my civilian doctor, he was like, absolutely. Based on what the short amount of information you told me, the health effects of PFAS, absolutely we're going to do this. We just need to figure out how to do it. And it took us a year to do it. But he was all for it. Not on the military side, not on the VA side. Like I said, veterans are walking in, they're asking for this. They've got the research. I've given them, information to take to their VA doctor and say, look, here it is, folks. This is why you need to do a PFAS blood test. And they're getting turned away. And those that work with the VA, you get frustrated. You get pissed off. You're like, why even go back? I'm just going to get turned away. And, don't let somebody's incompetence, ignorance, we could go down through the dictionary and find words. Don't let these individuals discourage you from seeking medical assistance. You have to steer your own healthcare. I've said that for years. I did it when I was in active duty. The young listeners out there, in the military, you steer your own medical care. If that's why there's patient advocates in every hospital, whether it's military or civilian. VA, you have a patient advocate, you have patient rights. If they are turning you away, if they are giving you attitude, and I've heard from several veterans, doctors, nurses, technicians are giving these veterans attitudes over this PFAS blood test. Immediately go up, file a complaint with the patient advocate, fill it out, keep a copy for yourself if you want, send it to a friend, send it to whoever, so there's a backup to the backup. But yeah, you absolutely have rights. You have a right to get your blood tested done. I've said this before. You go to any oncologist. How do they screen for early signs of cancer? They take a damn blood test. Okay, why aren't we doing the same thing? We know PFAS increases the risk of cancer and other medical illnesses. So why would you not screen someone's blood? Oh, because it's costly. Again, we're putting price tags on our health, folks, and we're not doing it. It's the system. It's the system that's doing it. So, enough with that. I got to get a sip of coffee here. Hang on. Damn, fire department coffee, the best. And yes, folks, they are a real company. As you heard in their promo, Jason Patton, hell of a guy, VP there at Fire Department Coffee. Their coffee is just phenomenal. So hopefully with the holidays coming up, fall season coming up, they're going to have some new flavors. We'll keep you informed of that. So, all right, folks. There was an article, a story, Hampton Roads area. For those that are familiar with Hampton Roads, that's in the Virginia area. To Hampton Roads, Williamsburg, Hampton, Newport News, Portsmouth, Norfolk, Suffolk, that area. That's big naval shipyard Norfolk Naval Air Station down there, Oceana area down there, Virginia Beach. That's the Hampton Roads area. WVEC recently did a story. They had some snippets from different things talking about PFAS contamination in that area. The reporter, nice guy. I reached out to him, waiting to hear back from him. But he did respond back via email. I want to talk, on the phone with him, not back and forth with email, because a lot is lost in the context. Folks, you know that. Instant message, email. There's a lot lost in translation. So he dropped a story on this, and in his response, it sort of seemed like he was caught off guard with the amount of PFAS contamination that's in that area. And I'm not shocked with that, because a lot of these communities, when these reporters, they hear some things online, they read a few things, they try to get spun up. That's how reporters do. Some reporters, they're really good. They do a lot of homework, they do a lot of research, and then they drop the story. And I don't know how this reporter got wind of all this. Hopefully listening to my podcast, or somebody tipped him off. But he dropped a story, said, hey, there's, PFAS contamination due to firefighting foam, at these military installations. I don't think he really mentioned how much contamination there was. We know for a fact, Langley Air Force Base, and I'm gonna keep throwing them. I said at the beginning of the podcast, I don't like throwing people under the bus, but damn it, I need to put pressure on Langley Air Force Base leadership, Air Force leadership, DoD leadership, because when you have 2.2 million parts per trillion of PFAS contamination in on-base groundwater, that shit didn't get there overnight. It didn't just, commanders didn't wake up and be like, whoa, where'd this all come from? It's not like a hangar dump activation in the middle of the night and be like, oh shit, we got all this contamination. No, 2.2 million parts per trillion of PFAS contamination. That's decades. That's decades worth. If they're just saying, well, this was out by the fire training grounds, before we lined the pit and everything. Those familiar with Langley, yeah, they have a fire training pit. It's lined. They've switched over to propane now. Before, it used to be fuel. They dump foam into it. They were dumping foam when I was there before they finally said, nope, enough is enough. That groundwater seeps into the back river, which then goes into the Chesapeake Bay. Well, guess what's in that water, folks? That ding, ding, ding. That's right. Seafood. I've said this before. And folks in the Hampton Roads area, if you're listening, pay attention to this, because on any given day, whether it's at Langley Air Force Base, Newport News, shipyards, up at Fort Eustis, right up the road as you're heading towards Williamsburg, a lot of these areas are surrounded by water. Okay, on any given day, you can stand there in the shoreline. Watch fishermen out there. They're either dropping fish nets or they're dropping crab pots. They're catching seafood. Where do you think that seafood goes? Ding, ding, ding. That's right. It goes right back to a local seafood market. It gets sold on the market to unsuspecting customers because nobody's testing this seafood for PFAS. Baltimore's done it. The folks up in Baltimore have tested their seafood up in Maryland, and they found PFAS in the seafood. 2.2 million parts per trillion, folks, just at Langley Air Force Base. Why the hell are they not testing the seafood that's caught right offshore? Guaranteed. I will put my reputation on the line that if they test the seafood adjacent to these bases in the Hampton Roads area, it's going to test hot for PFAS. And then what are they going to do? It's again, folks, I don't know why Langley Air Force Base leadership is sitting on this. They're so quiet. And again, it's not just Langley Air Force Base, folks. It's a lot of military installations out there. They know the PFAS contamination is there. They're not saying anything. What are they waiting for? There's different pieces of legislation out there. You look up at the former Wurtsmith Air Force Base up in Escata, Michigan. The Air Force received $13.5 million to do remediation to start cleanup. They said, no, we're going to do more research and testing. The Air Force isn't testing. They're paying contractors to do that. They're paying contractors 6 figures to go out there and say, yep, there's foam in the ground. Yep, there's foam in the water. There's PFAS in there. Yeah, we're gonna need to do more, and it's gonna take a few years to do so. Meanwhile, that $13.5 million is wasted away for what? For something we already know is there. You already know it's there. Cut off the source. And I told the PBS reporter. I've told many others. I've told Congress this. Until you cut off the source of contamination. It's for my hazmat techs out there. What do you have to do before you can stop the amount of contamination? You have to go plug and patch. The same thing is occurring with PFAS contamination. Okay? Yes, the Air Force has said, no, we're not going to discharge foam anymore for training. It's only going to be for actual use. Okay? Well, you still have fluorinated foam in your hangar suppression systems. How many times have we seen hangar dumps? Even after I started talking about all this, you had hangar dumps down in Texas. You had 2 bases in California intentionally dumped the foam system in their retrofitted hangars to do a function test, and then deliberately allowed firefighters to come in direct contact with that foam for training. Now, the Air Force had come back and they said, oh, no, that foam was perfectly safe. You look at the safety data sheet, not so much, folks. Matter of fact, you had one young, naive staff sergeant from the Civil Engineer Squadron that said, oh, yeah, that stuff is just dish soap. Folks, I can't. You should be as infuriated and baffled at the lack of education that's occurring by DOD and military leadership on PFAS. There's so much information out there right now. Why are they still disseminating false information that trickles down to fire departments? And hats off to the fire departments and firefighters, military and DOD civilian that have reached out to me, that I've talked to, that are doing the right thing despite the lack of initiative by DOD and military leaders. Fire departments, the chiefs out there, like I said, I will fully support each and every one of you. I will go to bat for you 100%. As long as you're doing the right thing, as long as you're being proactive, and many of you are, hats off to you. Unfortunately for the others, time to step up to the plate, folks. Time to do the right thing. Especially those that have the power to create or change policy, but refuse to do so. I've tried to reach out to the new Air Force Fire Chief. He has yet to respond back. I've heard that PFAS is a priority on his plate. I think more so than the previous Air Force Fire Chief, who never did get back to me. And I know why. I threw him under the bus several times. Him and I had history when I was a DOD, when I was a contractor, working on some DOD projects, particularly Air Force projects. We butted heads. I rocked the boat. He didn't like that. I was in the right. He was in the wrong. They're still in the wrong. I'll say it right now, the contractors that are still working on that, one of the contractors flat out said, hey, we're on the CRM, was it CRM? Gosh, I forget what it was now. It was continuous something. Basically, they were milking the project. And that's what these folks, that's what these DoD contractors do. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of great contractors out there. CSP, that's what it was, not CRM. CSP, Continued Salary Program. And this particular contractor actually said that to a client in front of their face. And I'm like, did that guy seriously say that? Continued salary program. So those that are unfamiliar with federal contracts, if they're awarded a contract for 5 years and they know they can get it done in 3, they're going to milk it for 5 years. Again, folks, it goes back to the $13.5 million at the Air Force up in Wordsmith. They're going to get a contract that's going to say, yep, you have to do research and testing for so long. They could wrap this up quickly, but they're going to milk that. That's how your money is wasted, folks. Taxpayers, that's how your money is wasted. Boy, I should have, I'm going to have to buy a bus driver hat. Next time you may see me, I may have the bus driver hat straight from the honeymooners. And I know that show's too old for a lot of you folks out there. So yeah, folks, rambling on here. That's where we are. Hampton Roads, they finally talked about it. I have yet to hear back from the reporter. I think it's going to be one of those, they're going to mention it and then it's going to fall on deaf ears. It's going to get buried. No longer to be talked about down there, because I'm sure military leaders, they're scrambling right now. And for folks, that are, whether you're active duty, DoD, civilian, military, veteran, whatever, community member, talk to your members of Congress. File a congressional inquiry. Tell them you want a congressional inquiry into this. It's like taking a magnifying glass and burning ants. You'll see them scramble anytime Congress is involved. And shout out to Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She is on one of the subcommittees for PFAS. She is awesome when it comes to pressuring the DoD, the VA to do more. We need to see more of that. So Representative Wasserman Schultz, if you're listening, if your followers are listening, reach out to her, let her know. We've mentioned her here in a podcast. We're asking for more pressure on the DoD and the military branches. And I've talked to, speaking of other military branches, I've talked to some folks, and they're saying the Air Force is doing some things, but the other branches aren't doing anything at all. And it's interesting to hear that, because in this DoD IG report, I think they mentioned maybe one non-Air Force base that they talked to. It's interesting because any military base that had or has an airfield very likely had apparatus that was carrying or using AFFF. So, there's whether you got a fixed wing or rotary wing, that's airplane or helicopter, folks. Even on the Navy side, they're a lot of their ships carry foam. You look at aircraft carriers, 20,000 gallons of foam is carried on just a single aircraft carrier. And then of course other ones, they have a smaller amount, but just the amount of fluorinated foam that's out there right now, that has been released and continues to be released in some fashion. Even when you're doing the Ecologic cart, I saw somebody posted on Facebook the other day. They're using this Eco cart, so you don't have to go out and discharge foam and stand underneath it and collect it with your little gauge and then put it on your refractometer and put it up to your eye. And that's how some folks have cancer around their eye. Is that foam, they were the ones in charge of doing that. So guess what? That foam seeps into your eye and your tear ducts, and now you've got cancer. That's the shit that was going on, folks. Because nobody told us, hey, foam is bad for you. It's perfectly fine. It's dish soap. It's fine. Obviously, we know that was all a lie. We were lied to for decades. But now they got this Eco cart. They've had it out for years. They retrofitted apparatus. It's all internal. But you still have to disconnect the hoses. So if you're not wearing PPE, if you're not wearing gloves, you're getting it on your hands. It drips in the station. There's still some cross-contamination in there. Will we ever get away from PFAS? No. I hate to say it, but no. Because it's in thousands and thousands of consumer products. Manufacturers are not telling us. They're not obligated to tell us. They know this stuff's toxic. They know it's hazardous, but we can go on and on and on. I don't want to bore you with that. So one thing I want to talk about, two things, as we're wrapping up here. Let me bring it up here. I got it here. Bear with me, folks. Okay, so the first one, while I'm doing that, let me bring that over. Type in. I apologize for some dead airspace here. Okay, so the first legislation I want to wrap up with here is HR 2467, and that is the PFAS Action Act of 2021. Now, this bill has been introduced, in looking at the summary here on the congress.gov's page. And again, anything that I'm referencing to, I try to put the links out there so you can follow along either during or after the podcast. But 2467, the PFAS Action Act of 2021, it's saying it's going to establish requirements and incentives to limit the use of PFAS, commonly referred to PFAS as per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and remediate PFAS in the environment. And they talk about how they're man-made, they have adverse human health effects, and they talk about how it's like in nonstick cookware, weatherproof clothing. We all know where it's at, the cosmetics, all that stuff. So they start going through, and again, it doesn't call for banning banning PFAS, because PFAS, certain PFAS does have a positive impact on some products that are out there. We get it, but we're looking with this one here is to minimize unnecessary exposure. And I bring this up because, again, there's certain time frames and everything in there. And we go through and we look at, the different actions. When you go onto this link, you'll be able to see, the different actions, when it was introduced, when it's into the Senate. It even has, a roll call vote. So you can actually go through and see who voted on this, who voted against it. And I bring it up because, here comes the bus, folks. Put the bus driver hat on. My representative here in Pennsylvania, the 12th district, Representative Fred Keller, voted no against this bill. He has voted no against anything PFAS since he got into office. You remember back when HR 535 was introduced, it passed the House, but no thanks to him. He voted no against it. And when just before the vote was to come in, I was actually in DC when that bill was being introduced for a vote. One of his staffers had called me up and said, "Hey, Fred's going to vote no against this." And I'm like, "Well, why?" I said, "It's a no-brainer." And they said, "Well, because some of the timelines in there that, they thought they were unrealistic." And we're talking years, folks, for folks, for the EPA and others to take action on this. So there was nothing unrealistic in that bill. With this one here, 2467, there's nothing unrealistic in there. I sent a letter out to Representative Keller's office. I've made several phone calls to his DC and local office here in Pennsylvania, and nobody wants to go ahead and chime back. And all I'm simply asking for is why? Why did he vote no against this? And it's interesting, and I bring this up when I say I'm throwing him under the bus, is because when 535 came out, wasn't too long afterwards, Representative Keller, Fred Keller, posed for a picture in front of DuPont. And I'm like, ding, ding, there it is. He is up there supporting one of the big three PFAS producing chemical manufacturers in the country. DuPont. We know it. 3M, DuPont, and Chemours. They produce massive amounts of PFAS. They're foam manufacturers. But here he is, the DuPont plant within his district. He's posing for a picture, says he fully supports them. And, this is just my opinion. We've seen politicians do this. They're getting campaign funding or some type of support from these politicians are getting support from these manufacturers, these chemical manufacturers. And we know we know, folks, politicians, they're just, let's be honest, they're sort of a middleman when it comes to these things. That's me. That's my opinions coming out. It's big industry that sort of steers and sways the votes. Let's be honest, folks. When it comes to PFAS chemicals, do the right thing, Fred. I said it in my letter. You know me. I actually ran against you when you were first elected. It's you said in your campaign, and I'm talking to you, Fred. You said in your campaign you support firefighters, you support emergency service providers. Do the right thing. Work on this PFAS issue. Work it hard. Be proactive. You've got firefighters within your district that are getting sick, that are developing cancer because of PFAS, whether it's through firefighting foam or now we know it's in our turnout gear. So I encourage you, if you don't want to talk to me about it, talk to other experts about this with PFAS. So, again, all I want is a damn truthful answer as to why Representative Fred Keller voted no against this. And maybe we can come to a compromise. We can work and get some things changed. But I've read through the bill. I can't see anything unrealistic in terms of timeframes. If anything, they're too long. We can make change quicker. But we keep kicking this can down the road. Because if it doesn't pass this year, it's going to die on the floor, only to be reintroduced next year, just as many other bills have. So, the other bill I want to talk about, the Michael Lesick Military Firefighters Protection Act, HR 2111-2111. Supposedly, there's some progress being made on this. I haven't heard what it is. When you read the bill, it's very short, to the point. The only problem that I have with this, and you've heard me talk about this before, as you scroll down, and it talks about different specified diseases. So, they've got quite a bit in here, lots of cancers. There's a period in here, and it's, when you look at the PDF, it's page 4, paragraph E in there. If you just look at the website, when you scroll down, it's actually, it's under presumptives of service connection for diseases associated with firefighting. So when you scroll down, it's paragraph E, it's called period, and it says the period specified in this subsection is within 15 years of the date on which the veteran separated from active military, naval, or air service. So the problem, and I've reached out to Representative Spanberger's office on this. The problem I have with that is that you're putting a time frame on this because, again, folks, we're human. Our bodies react differently to exposures to various substances. Meaning, me and somebody else could be exposed to PFAS, the exact same amount, the exact same time frame. Everything's identical. I get sick and the other person doesn't. That's just the reality of things. That's how our bodies work. We don't know why, but that's just how things are. So when you put a time frame of 15 years of the date on which the veteran separated from active military, You know, is Congress, is Representative Spanberger going to look that veteran that's 15 years and a day, that extra day they get diagnosed with cancer or whatever, you know, other illnesses are listed in here? Is she going to look that veteran in the eye and say, I'm sorry, but you're not eligible? You know, you don't qualify under this bill. I mean, come on, folks. You know, and I've told her staff when we had a Zoom conference with them, told her staff, you need to take that out because that's not right to veterans out there. I know veterans, former military firefighters that have been diagnosed with cancers or other medical illnesses way past that 15 years. It's, again, our bodies react differently. It's only a matter of time, but that's where we connect the dots. We backtrack everything and we're like, yep, this is associated with whatever exposure. So you look at, you look at what the VA just did in terms of the burn pits. I mean, they're going back to 1990, folks. So if you had, those three things, asthma, rhinitis, and I think it was rhinitis and sinusitis, from the 1990 forward, okay, it's not 15 years after you separate. They've backdated it. So the same should be done with PFAS on Mike's bill here. Put the damn date back to when AFFF was first invented. Let's do that. The hell with the time frame. Let's just say, boom, right here you go. From the day that AFFF was invented by the United States Navy, from this point forward, if you have any of these things, it's presumptive. Done. There you go, folks. That's how Congress should work. Common sense. Enough with this dancing around and legal this and legal that, because every day that ticks by when these bills set on the floor and aren't voted on and are revised and amended and kicked down the road and die on the floor only to be reintroduced the following session, we've got firefighters, we've got emergency responders, we've got civilians in our communities that are getting sick and dying waiting for answers, and enough is enough. So folks, that's gonna do it. I'm getting tired. My voice is going. I'm getting frustrated. I could ramble on and on and on. I wanted to, like I said, get us back on track with our podcasts. Like I said, hopefully this does it. I'm gonna have some links out there. Topics we discussed today. As always, if you have questions, comments, concerns, please email me here at the podcast at contact at CONTACT at AFSO21. That's AFSO21.com. So again, that email is contact at AFSO21.com. If you respond back on YouTube, we try to get back to you as quick as we can. Same thing on Facebook. You can message us there. You can post. Send us stuff on our different social media pages. So with that, folks, as always, stay safe, keep supporting your local fire emergency services, and until next time, biggie props to my cousin Steve up there in heaven looking down on us. That's going to do it for now, folks. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Keep listening and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please do that and like our podcast pages. So that's it, folks. Until next time, we're out of here.